6th day, June 2023. I'm going to be your host, Dana Durnford. I hope you're having a great day. Oodles and oodles of news to get through from the first couple of weeks in 2011. There's some really amazing stuff, my goodness. We've never covered it on this site before. I'm just going to jump right into it and get rid of the music here. And I was just shocked. I was going over it, and I was like, my goodness. So this is on the 12th. This is the day after the tsunami in Japan. This is reactor 1 is detonated. Japan's nuclear power operator has a checkered past. A checkered past. By the way, you can call in. It's 709-589-4406. 4406. And you can text. We can read it out. So the time of TEPCO has a checkered past. At the center of the nuclear crisis following the biggest earthquake in Japan's recorded history, has had a rocky past in the industry plagued by scandals, which is pretty appropriate when you think about it. TEPCO's plagued by scandals, which, by the way, we've got a poll tonight about TEPCO, which is a recurring theme tonight. Did the nuclear industry make Fukushima worse by leaving TEPCO, the inepto, in charge of multiple nuclear meltdowns? We've never had that on our planet before. Shouldn't have that warranted the nuclear industry taking over instead of being barred? Well, they weren't going there. There's lethal doses everywhere. And so the corporation can't go to jail. Remember that. And this is a catastrophic event for all species, not just humanity. Japanese government on Saturday that there had been radiation leakage at the TEPCO Daiichi nuclear power plant following an explosion. So the word leaking and explosions, leaking is the precursor to the explosion. After the explosion, it's hemorrhaging. Just trying to get some key leakage. The building actually detonated. You can't, they don't show the explosion because you can't use that narrative, I guess, if you do. The blast came as TEPCO was working desperately to reduce the pressure in the core of the reactors at the 40-year-old disease factories. At the 40-year-old disease factory. So this, the time of reactor 1 had detonated. Now last night there was a silly amount of work went into it, but you can't keep that pace up, right? Or can you? Apparently not. Sometimes, excuse me. Sometimes it's better for me just to go to the archive to find a picture of a reactor in particular than it is to go into my... It's important, so just bear with me. Reactors, let's get some new pictures in this program. Reactor 1 explosion. So does it look like it's leaking? The building was like you see to your right in the bottom. This is March the 12th, by the way, the same day as the story, that picture is. In 2002, the president of the country's largest power utility, TEPCO, was forced to resign, along with 4 other senior executives, taking responsibility for suspected falsification of nuclear power plant safety records. And 29 cases involving falsified repair records at nuclear reactors, including Fukushima. It had to stop operations at 5 reactors for safety inspections. In 2006, the government ordered TEPCO to check past data. Ordered TEPCO. Instead of having auditors go and do it, you put the corporation in charge to check past data after it reported that it had found falsifications of coolant water temperatures at Fukushima Daiichi in 85 and 1988, and that the tweaked data was used in mandatory inspections which were completed in 2005. 2007, TEPCO reported it found more past data falsification, though this time it did not have to close 5 plants. So you put the criminal in charge. Well, way to go, nuclear. Operators aware decision to vent hydro. And this is why we got that poll tonight, by the way. Because why would you put the operator in charge? There's no incentive not to be evil. Did the nuclear industry make Fukushima worse by leaving TEPCO and NEPTO in charge of the multiple nuclear reactor meltdowns? And it appears so, don't it? Operator was aware the decision to vent the hydrogen was risky. This was a meltdown. And by the way, this is on the 13th of March. The accident happened, or the catastrophic event happened on the 11th. This is 2 days later. The walls of the building at the nuclear power station crumbled. No, the walls didn't crumble. The building blew up. The fuel pools were atomized in aerosol and released into the environment. Officials knew the risks were high when they decided to vent radioactive steam from a severely overheated reactor vessel. They knew a hydrogen explosion could occur, which is the actual meltdown. The explosion is caused by the meltdown. The decision still trumpeted the worst case alternative, total nuclear meltdown, at least for the time being. No, that's a total nuclear meltdown right there. That's it, baby. Alvarez, we've covered many times. Let's go backwards. The chain of events, no pun on words there, I'm sure. Hours after the explosion, they contend that the radiation leaks were reduced and that the circumstances had gotten better. I wouldn't lie to you at all. And the crisis after crisis after crisis after crisis continued to develop and be revealed without power, without plant pipes and pumps that were destroyed in the explosion and the tsunami. The most troubled reactors' containment buildings, authorities resorted to drawing seawater, which was a Hail Mary, in an attempt to cool off the overheated uranium fuel. It's literally the worst thing you could have done. Besides building it, where they have 1,000 earthquakes a year and tsunamis for 3,000 a year that go 300 feet high. Get past that, and this is the worst thing. Put salt water. Now, I don't like Alvarez, and I've covered him a lot over the years and years, but originally, when the accidents happen, that's why this stuff is so important. When the accident originally happens, a lot of them are not established yet. And so, they don't know if they're supposed to tell the truth, they're supposed to tell the lie. Because this is only 3 days in, right? The 13th. Alvarez said in a briefing for reporters the seawater was a desperate measure. It's a Hail Mary pass. Well, it was already gone. When she blew up, that's it. It ejected the reactor core into the earth within a... It burned... right, because we got a lot of headlines on Reactor 1. It burnt, too. Seawater was like for several days, like Reactor 2 did. Seawater was a desperate measure. It's a Hail Mary. That's being pretty polite, but that's accurate. It was a pointless. That's what a Hail Mary. It wasn't even a Hail Mary. It was pointless. The reactors had blown up. Come on, don't do me like that, tea. My tea is super hot. Try not to slurp too loud, Dana. Woo! This will take a while for that's fit touch. The success of using seawater and boron to cool the reactor will depend on the volume, the rate of distributions. He said the dosing. That's because the water, it's burning at thousands of degree Fahrenheit temperatures. Water is not going to make it to it. Would need to continue nonstop for days. They came in with 6 loads or something. I only counted 4, but the other 2, I guess, weren't on video. Dosing would need to continue nonstop for days. Guess what they didn't do? Dosing. Because dosing is when 1/1000th of the water gets close to the building. It's a lethal dose everywhere. There's reactor cores ejected, fuel rods from the fuel pools. Another key said was restoration of electrical power. Which, I know it's 3 days later, but didn't he see a tsunami? Like the tsunami covered the whole west coast. Or in their case, east coast, I guess. Another key said was the restoration of electrical power, so normal cooling system could be restored. But the cooling, because this is day 3, so you got a couple of reactors detonated. Let me see if we can find something there. Because we're talking about Reactor 1. Let's bring up Reactor 1 again. So see, Reactor 1, because a lot of people can't comprehend, is the fuel pools are at the top of the buildings. These beams you see there, you can turn an SUV around on it. Like, it's so hard for the average person, unfortunately, to get context. And I'm so shitty at providing it all the time, consistently. It'll probably be, just bear with me. Go figure. It still doesn't do it justice. Wait now. Yeah, I'll never find it. It's nice to have context sometimes, but we've got so many different facets of things going on there. It's like a never-ending job to come up with context for it. Let me get back on track. That can't be too hard. That's where we're supposed to be. Officials placed Daiichi Unit 1 and 4 other reactors under a state of emergency Friday because operators had lost ability to cool the reactors. Lost the ability to... like, it's okay to say we had an earthquake and a tsunami that took out 1,300 miles of the coastline. There was no power to connect to. It's not a crime, to be honest, An additional reactor was added to the list early Sunday for a total of 6, 3 at the Daiichi and 3 at another complex, which was 10 miles south, called the Daini. And they're not going to restart them. They're decommissioning them, they claim. But they admitted to having thousands of tons of radioactive water from the tsunami. They were at the same... They're right in front of the tsunami, the earthquake itself and the tsunami. And they're also right at the same level as Fukushima on the sea. There's actually some really good stuff about that coming up. Local evacuations have been ordered at each location. Japan has a total of 55 reactors and 17 sites. Officials began venting steam at Unit 1 to relieve pressure inside the vessel, which was the first one to blow up, right? But there was no, I don't know how that was possible when you had the whole coastline stripped up to 10 kilometers and more in many places. They actually talk about that for a change coming up. Concerns escalated dramatically Saturday. That unit's containment building exploded. Exploded. Oh, to exploding. I'm sorry, Unit 1. The explosion at Reactor 1 was caused by the damage from the earthquake and preceded the tsunami, which was 9 minutes later. Keep going here. It turned out officials were aware that the steam contained hydrogen, acknowledged the steam contained hydrogen. A spokesperson for the government nuclear industrial safety agency. More importantly, they also were aware of rising or risking an explosion by deciding to vent the steam. These are very high pressure reactors. They're very old, so they're brittle, right? And they're at over 1,000 psi. And so if you get a crack in that, that's a very, which apparently they did, right? Especially reactor 3. The significance of the hydrogen began to come clear late Saturday. The whole nuclear industry was aware of this immediately. This is the problem. See? Officials decided to reduce the rising pressure inside the reactor vessel so they vented some of the steam buildup. If you look at the pictures of the site, there's no way they can vent something. They need to do that to prevent the entire structure from exploding and thus steering down the road to a meltdown. This is day 3, or day 4. Day 3, I believe. 13th? The hell is that? 13th. There it is. The 13th was a bad day for humanity and the rest of the species on the planet. The significance of the hydrogen began to come, just the explosions caused by the meltdowns. The hydrogen, radioactive hydrogen, is a byproduct of the radioactive meltdown. Officials decided to reduce the rising pressure inside the reactor vessel, so they vented some of the steam buildup. They needed to do that to prevent the entire structure from exploding, which is what happened to it. And once the zirconium reaches, the cladding reaches 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit, 1,200 degrees Celsius, it reacts with the water and becomes zirconium oxide and hydrogen. When the hydrogen-filled steam was vented, which you couldn't do from the reactor because it's melted down, there's lethal doses everywhere. With oxygen in either case in the air, the water, the vessels, and exploded. This is them being, like whoever wrote this is the nuclear industry, very deeply involved in the nuclear industry. They give it to a journalist who puts their name on it. A similar hydrogen bubble had concerned officials at 3 Mile Island until it dissipated. This was vented at 3 Mile Island. If the temperature inside the Fukushima reactor continued to rise even more, roughly 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit, 2,200 degrees Celsius, uranium pellets would start to melt. And that would catch fire to the plutonium, all the pellets, and that's the chain reaction. There's no way to contain it when you get to those temperatures. According to the experts interviewed by the Associated Press, any melted fuel would eat through the bottom of the reactor. It would eat through the floor of the already damaged containment building. At that point, the uranium and dangerous byproducts would start escaping into the environment. At some point in the process, the walls of the reactor vessels, 15 centimeters of stainless steel, would melt into a lava-like pile, into any remaining water on the floor, and potentially cause an explosion bigger than the one caused by the hydrogen. Such an explosion would enhance the spread of radioactive contaminants. So the time at the containment, 6 inches of stainless steel would melt, liquefy, and when it fall down, hit any water below, would cause a steam explosion. Anybody who's been around probably remembers that connotation, right? If the reactor core becomes exposed to the external environment, officials would likely begin pouring cement and sand over the entire facility, as was done with Chernobyl. Peter Bradford, a former commissioner of the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, said in a briefing to reporters, they stopped saying shit like this shortly after, right? So this is gold. This is real gold, this stuff. This is the original. We've covered, this is the third day. Addicted to this stuff now. 3 days. It's like sugar or something. Another expert called Ken Bergenson, a physicist, former Sandina scientist, asked that as a result of such a meltdown, the surrounding land would be off limits for a considerable period of time, and a lot of first responders would die. Now they say nothing, right? So it's really fun when you got, and this is so early in the game, this is still March the 13th. Second blast, which was reactor 3, rocks Japanese nuclear plant. So this is day 3. Reactor 3 is detonated. Let me sort of drag up a quick. Reactor 3 would have looked like, that's exactly what it looked like on the 13th. There is no, Reactor 3 is left Japan. The second explosion rocked Japan's troubled Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, leaving 3 workers injured, 7 missing. A similar blast occurred at the plant's Unit 1 reactor on Saturday. And Dano, Japan's chief cabinet, and I really despised that disgusting creature, confirmed, 12 years, Danny, get over it. No, I'm still 12 years. Every time I hear his name, I want to spit on the floor and say, bastard. A hydrogen explosion occurred at Unit 3. Little leaks, hydrogen explosions. You ever heard tell of, nuclear meltdown? It's done everything but nuclear meltdown. Data? Uh-huh. That's true, actually. You spit the reactor core about a mile up in the air, along with 4 decades of reactor cores that were in the fuel pools at the top of this massive disease factory. Second explosion blasts at Plant Unit 1 reactor on Saturday. This is Sunday, right? March the 13th. It happened on a Friday, their time. And Dano, Japan's chief cabinet secretary, confirmed a hydrogen explosion occurred at Reactor 3. And people within 20 miles of the disease factory were ordered to stay inside, get sick, and die. He added that the reactor's inner containment vessel, which holds the nuclear rods, fuel rods, was intact. No, it's not even in the building anymore. It got jacked out of the building at almost the speed of light. There's pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second for millions of years. So explosions occurred at reactor 3 on Monday morning. So there was more explosions, right? Idano added that the reactor's inner containment vessel, which holds the nuclear rods, remained intact. It's unforgivable that that was the spokesman instead of nuclear scientists. The Unit 3 reactor, when it was powerful enough that Associated Press journalists felt the blast 25 kilometers away. We get different variations where you say 25 miles, 25 kilometers. An official at the Japan Nuclear Safety Agency said earlier Monday the radiation at the worst hit Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant remained above acceptable levels, and which is startling for these people to admit anything. 3 other nuclear complexes reported damage after twin disasters struck the island's nation on Friday. States of emergency declared at 6 nuclear reactors where cooling systems are knocked out. 3 at the Daiichi and 3 at the nearby Fukushima Daiichi plant. Radiation leaked. How can we ever forgive an industry that misrepresents the facts so blatantly? Yeah, it leaked, and we had to pick up 30 million one-ton bags of radiation. But don't worry, it's a normal leak. Don't listen to Dana, fearmongering. Let's try this one. Can I get lucky over here? Oh, yeah, that's better. Ooh. Just bear with me, I get my mind sorted out here. This is what they call dosing. Remember that term earlier where they talked about dosing water? That's reactor 3. We affectionately call her Medusa. Well, not her, I guess, but Medusa. Partial meltdown was highly possible. Well, reactor 3 is gone. It's absolutely gone. It's only symbolic to spray water from. They're on the other side of the turbine buildings, which is seaside, right? Trying to shield themselves. You're still going to get a lethal dose. There was no water going in there. The reactor core and the fuel pool are gone. And so now you're talking about roaring temperatures, spraying the salt water on it, creates this sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyball effect with the sulfur. The sulfur ingests all kinds of isotopes and becomes super hot particle that is very mobile and it's not soluble in water like the cesium microparticles. And they're very, very hot. Just one in your lung, eventually you're going to have a huge tumor, but you could end up with all kinds of diseases while you're waiting for the tumor to show up. Tumors created by white blood cells attacking it for 20 or 30 years. But if you saturate your body with radiation, your body reacts by trying to defend all the dead cells and chromosomes, DNA and every strands that are being destroyed every second by pulses of energy from thousands or millions in your body. That's called leukemia. Officials said the amount of radiation leaked in the massive explosions. Leaked in the missing reactor. The reactors are missing. The fuel pools are missing, but it leaked. I'm very annoyed they used that word leak. That has really gotten under my skin in the last couple of years. I'll get over it. Although the assertion did little to ease public concern. Thank goodness. Officials said the amount of radiation leaked did not pose. The pills, they're going to pass their pills, can help protect against thyroid cancers. They're going to, I think, what was it they said? 230,000 doses of iodine, iodate, for thyroid glands to displace the radiation before you ingest it. But to the people they were giving it to, the plume is already, multiple plumes have already gone through there, and this is the 13th, so the next couple of days there's another couple of massive new plumes. And the original detonations are pulses. And that's, you're talking about an absurd amount released into the environment. It's extremely significant, these pulses. These are unprecedented in history. They dwarf all the nuclear weapons. Up to 100, and they were terrible, right? Up to 160 people were waiting for evacuation in Fukushima, which is attached to the Daiichi plant. They're growing food there. They got 14 million one-ton bags of radiation also and other stuff there. It's been abandoned for 12 years. Did I mention they're growing food there? You can, when you stand up to take the stress off your back from farming, you look to your left and there's good old Fukushima melting down. They say 160 people in Fukushima, which these were mostly people from the hospitals. Remember, they left 50 people with Alzheimer's and dementia there. They died. They abandoned them, right? In Fukushima. Have been exposed to radiation, according to a spokesperson for the Japan's nuclear agency. Severity of the exposure, or if it not reached dangerous levels, was not clear. Well, because you refuse to acknowledge the buildings blew up, for goodness sakes. And this is on the 13th, my goodness, to refusing to acknowledge the buildings have blown up. Hard cases. Wasn't clear whether the fuel rods were melting inside of Unit 1. What was so unclear about Unit 1? The fuel pools were, at the time, at the top of the building, they're actually gone. The cooling system at Unit 2 also failed, but is less affected in the crisis. The three other reactors of facility are in a safe shutdown state. Now remember, this is the 13th, 2 days later. So there's some confusion, I'm sure, but whoever wrote the story was a nuclear expert. They weren't confused, is what I'm saying. The editor to put their name on it didn't write the story. Quake shifted the island, sped up Earth's rotation. But it shifted the island 2.4 meters. Well, it says 2 meters there, but underneath it says 2.4 meters. According to information from a GPS station, was moved 2.4 meters. The quake was the fifth largest recorded in the world since 1900. It occurred where North America and the Pacific tectonic plates intersect. In the northwest region of the Ring of Fire was an estimate 299 kilometers long and 150 kilometer wide tectonic plate movement. 300 kilometers long, 150 kilometers wide. That's why it was so they have multiple earthquakes, because it would have jolted multiple times. Tsunami swept away entire villages. I remember it vividly. Scenes of devastation at the heart of the Sendai disaster. She scanned the landscape of debris destruction, looking at a patch of earth where Japan's massive tsunami razed her son's newly built house so thoroughly she can't even be certain where it once stood. Yeah, the footage of the tsunami it's heartbreaking. Been going on for thousands of years. They knew about it for 3,000 years. Why would they build a nuclear plant right off the major fault line itself? It's not like they didn't know that fault line wasn't there. There's no way they can say that. In Sendai, mud-splattered survivors wandered the streets, strewed with fallen trees and houses ripped from foundations, alongside of smaller relics of destroyed lives, a desk, a chair, a beer cooler. The shaking was so fierce that they just panicked. The waves swept up to 10 kilometers inland. That's in Sendai we're talking about. It actually went a lot further in some places. And things were shaking so much we couldn't even stand up. I mean, this stuff is just diamonds, eh? It really is. Now they tell you nothing but lies. That was just wicked lies, holy smokes. Even back then it was pretty wicked. Come on, Dana. We got a poll that I'd like to bring to your attention. Did nuclear industry make Fukushima worse by leaving TEPCO in charge of multiple nuclear meltdowns? And we've never had multiple nuclear meltdowns before. And this is what they've done at every one of them. Left the company in charge so the nuclear industry wouldn't get a big fat lip and a black eye. And it didn't give a shit about the species or humanity or the communities. Just didn't. It wanted to have a scapegoat. And the scapegoat this time is TEPCO. And putting TEPCO in charge, literally, who's not a decommissioning authority, even the Fukushima prefectural government in 2014 was calling for their ouster. They're vicious. It's vicious. Corporation on a stock exchange on top of that. So there's nobody can be held accountable. The Japanese earthquake is and they can, if they get blamed, they can just dissolve their company. And the nuclear industry doesn't have a fat lip, black eye, and somebody trying to push it off a cliff. The Japanese earthquake is a tragedy of epic proportions in so many ways. The situation continues to evolve, and the full scope of the disaster will not be understood for a long time. There's an understatement of the year. These maps coming up after this one are really something. Some of the largest nuclear plants in the world, the Daiichi and the Dyning. The Daiichi was 4.7 gigawatts. So at the time, these were huge plants, and they had 40 years of inventory on top of that. And are located close to the epicenter on the coast, directly in the path of the resulting tsunami. So why did they build it there? It's very, very dubious that they built it. And so you can see this one is the Daini, and then the one alongside of is the Daiichi. And there's also Tohu, which is just north of it. So the red, the tsunami was over 3 meters, 9 feet or more. The orange was 6 feet or more. So the red, you can see the whole coastline that it actually covers. We got reports of 1,300 miles of the coastline of ravaged places. So that's a great model to have in our pile, right? Let's put that over there. So we can find it again someday. I screwed that up, did I? I guess so. Hang on. Perfect. The workers have been desperately trying to cool the reactor cores, Unit 1 and 3. This is the 14th, is it? Yeah, March the 14th. Reactor 4 has a fire that afternoon, blows up the next day. And multiple fires, multiple explosions, actually. Without the ability to cool the core, the risk is a meltdown with the potential for explosions resulting from steam or hydrogen. This is radioactive hydrogen is caused by the meltdown. It's melting down. That's why the hydrogen existed. Workers have been desperately trying to cool the reactor cores. Footage of the plant shows only the skeleton of the building remains. I would like to know which reactor they were actually talking about. That was the 14th, so reactor 3 had blown up, and that would have been a skeleton. That's reactor 1 blowing up. Company said in documents 7.9 was the highest magnitude for which they tested the safety of number 1, number 2 nuclear power plants. So the Daiichi is number 1, the Daini was number 2, which is 10 kilometers to the south. This is Fukushima before the tsunami, and this looks totally different today. But this is, remember, this is day 4 of the tsunamis. This is 4 days after the tsunami. It just ripped everything apart. It's kind of hard to... The Fukushima Daiichi plant was equipped with 13 diesel backup generators. 13 massive... and a lot of them were saying you got to start these generators. They typically like to start them 24 hours before they're going to use them. They're huge monsters, eh? And you need to get all the circuits and everything sorted out. All of those 13 failed. Lucky 13. Without the ability to cool the reactors, the outcome is a meltdown, which can occur rapidly after the failing of cooling. If the reactor coolant pumps are not running, the upper part of the core gets exposed to a steam environment, and heat up of the core would begin. Fuel would start ballooning and busting in less than half an hour. The peak core temperatures would cause the fuel rods, zirconium cladding, the fuel rods to balloon and bust. Former U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commissioner member Peter Bradford. The other thing that happens is the cladding, which is just the outside of the tube, at a high enough temperature interacts with the water, essentially a high-speed rusting, where the zirconium becomes zirconium oxide and the hydrogen is liberated, which is radioactive hydrogen. And the hydrogen, well, what they're talking about is the meltdown liberates the hydrogen. And for quite a long time, there was random explosions in the sky over it. That's what it was, continuing to melt down and release the hydrogen. Tuesday's news on the disaster in Japan. Yeah, I'm not going to have no nightmares from that at all. Just madness, eh? The race to bring 3 nuclear reactors under control. So this is day 15. Or March the 15th. This is day 5. Between 50 and 70 employees, now known in English as the Fukushima 50. There's been a couple of thousand Fukushima 50, so 50,000 of them, all in protective gear, aka paper suits. Some are assessing the damage radiation levels caused by the explosions. While others, from a telescope far away, I hope, while others cool stricken reactors with seawater, which is just posturing. The reactors, you can't cool them down because they're high pressure. You lost all the power, so you can't release the pressure. All of them are going to continue to heat. Try to avert a potential catastrophic release of radiation. This is the 15 we're talking about when reactor 3 is already detonated, reactor 1 detonated, reactor 2 is detonated. Workers at nuclear power industry equivalent of a frontline soldier, exposing themselves to considerable risk, that's an understatement of a lifetime, while 80 of their evacuated colleagues watch from a safe distance. They They never stopped running. It's probably still running today. 15 people on the site, including members of the self-defense force, have been injured in the blast. The blast. Well, I'll show you the blast at reactor 3. I might have it right here. Well, I got the two of them actually. Reactor 1 and Reactor 3 blast profiles. So March the 14th, which is the day before the story we're talking about, is to the right. 3 days before that, the explosion is to your left. You're talking an absurd, a ridiculous amount of fuel and reactor cores being thrown into the environment. There's no way nothing we could compare it to in history. 6:45 p.m. update. Fire at number 4 reactor, and that's as bad as it gets. She's melting down, right? A fire broke out at number 4. Reported that attempts to put out the fire had not started because the previous one gone out naturally. There's no way you can go there. It's burning. You drop dead before you get very close to it. The area is filled with high levels of radiation, so reaching it is complicated. That's probably a pro-nuclear, at least, that wrote this story. The AP, however, reports Tokyo Electric Power Company says the new fire erupted because the first one was not extinguished. TEPCO said. This is why we're going to poll, should TEPCO be removed? Did the nuclear industry make Fukushima worse by leaving inepto in charge of the multiple nuclear meltdowns? Somebody's like, no. I mean, it's pretty clear they did. They made it unbelievably worse. They sacrificed the whole planet. Hi, everybody. Just bear with me. Here we go. A new fire erupted because the first one wasn't extinguished, is claimed. New fire erupted because the first one wasn't extinguished. Really? So Russia dam is, Ukraine dam is busted. We got PBS lover in the comments section talking about a dam. You can see pictures to our left. Supplying water to the nuclear. Well, the nuclear plant is not running. If it's the same one they claim it is. Wow, that's some serious stuff right there. They're not going to get that up and running again. Ukraine accused Russia of blowing up the dam from inside, a deliberate war crime. Russia installed officials gave conflicting accounts blaming Ukraine. Ukraine blamed Russia. The vast reserve beyond is one of the main features of the southern Ukraine. New humanitarian disasters in the war zone. Yeah, that's terrible news. I'm not sure. More propaganda from the industry. And right across from the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant is massive farmland, as far as you can see. And so that nuke plant is not faces threat from dam's destruction, but it's right underwater. Right? It's right underwater. And now I'm not sure if it's a Zaporizhzhia, as far as I know, the reactors are all shut off. And so it's just the fuel pools. They can manage that from just pumping it straight up, which is still not good. I'm not sure how that would work. They got to filter this stuff, put boron into it. It's supposed to have no impurities because they're afraid of a random neutron ignition in the fuel pools. That's something to look at for tomorrow night. Thank you, because that's a big story. And this is 13 hours ago. I didn't get to it, unfortunately. Let's keep her rocking and rolling. I'll be looking at, we'll see what's up tomorrow night. We'll get to it. Hi, Stephen Young. Who's the one person who voted wrong in the poll? That's Charlie. Calm down, Charlie. You know the guy who phones me all the time? That's what we think it is, anyway. Well, I do anyway. I don't know about anybody else, but I do. 2 workers gone missing after explosion at reactor 4. So this is the 15th, and they're talking about number 4 detonating on the 15th. Just the fuel pools for reactor 4 are at the very top of that building. Right there at the very top. There's two of them, one over there, one over there. The fuel pool is also at the top, the reactor core. As you can notice, it appears to be missing. Of course, I think this is BBC, Rupert Winfield Hayes. Yeah. He claims he's in the fuel pool at the top of the building that doesn't exist anymore. What else is new? Damn journalists, can't trust them at all anymore. Destroyed that on us. Reuters reported officially said the roof of the reactor appeared to be cracked. Cracked! Oh, I can find you a picture of what it actually looked like on that day. Right there. It's right alongside of Medusa, reactor 3. So, look, does the roof on reactor 4 to your left look cracked? Or is it just my glasses are dirty? I think it looks cracked to me. I can't tell. I gotta get out the magnifying glass. Oh crap, not the magnifying glass, Dana. Oh. Reactor 4 is to your left. Let's get it in the center of the screen here. We're checking to see if the roof is cracked. Give me a break. I'm just trying to do the right thing. Bear with me. Come on, Dana. It doesn't matter. I don't know. It could be cracked. I want to know was it cracked or not. Does the roof look like it's cracked to anybody, or is I'm just making a mountain out of a molehill? Well, they got rid of the crack. They tore it off later, actually. And all's left is that little stump. And then everybody should go down there and get a souvenir. Does it look like there's anything useful left in that building to your left? It goes to show, though, how big those pylons actually are. It's hard to wrap your mind around it. But that is still right there on the ground alongside of it. They're not cleaning that up anytime soon. Despite what BBC claims. Cracked roof, you say. 500. This is an amazing headline. We got a lot of them tonight, haven't we? 500 bone marrow transplant centers across Europe. that's a mad headline. That would be some headline on its own, wouldn't it? That is something else, man. Holy shit. I gotta put that in my collection of holy shit. Hang on. Because that's up there pretty high with my typical oh shit stuff. That's like oh shit, man. 500 bone marrow transplant centers. Transplant centers. Not for you, of course, for the elite. Across Europe are being asked to be on standby to treat the Japanese radiation victims if the need arises. Japan like, what leak? There's no leak. 500 bone marrow transplant centers across Europe on standby to treat the radiation victims from the nuclear meltdowns in Japan. 500 buildings specializing in bone marrow transplant. Man, that is dynamite. That is holy shit stuff. I was like, what? That officially blew my mind today. I was reading that and I was like, I'm an idiot. I didn't have this one out there by now. Well, it's out there. I got it thrown in my oh shit pile. Oh shit, look at this. 500 bone marrow transplant centers across Europe are on standby to treat the Japanese radiation victims. This is BBC reporting, if the needs arise. God bless BBC, man. They were taking care of us. Except for Rupert Winfield Hayes, of course, and a few more of them. But some of them, I mean, that is something, what? Wow. They're expecting thousands and thousands and thousands. And there was around 3,000 people died shortly after. And they blamed it on stress. Well, that was stress. Having to leave their homes. The nuclear industry was like, they should have stayed where they were told. They're just ruthless, eh? Guess who's down in South Korea doing a book tour right now? I'll give you 50,000 guesses. The first bunch doesn't count. Wade Allison, former professor from Oxford. One of the most vile humans besides Rod Adams you'll ever meet. Pretty hard to be worse than Rod Adams. They'll be making horror movies about Rod Adams in the future a bit. Forget Ted Bundy. Forget John Wayne Gacy. Forget Manson. Rod Adams, the real monster of humanity. Thousands ignore the government and flee areas near nuclear power plants. So this is on the reactor 4 is detonated, right? Reactor 3 is detonated. Reactor 2 is detonated. Reactor 1 is detonated. The government's like, no, don't panic. Calm down. Calm down, children. Citizens. 500 bone marrow transplants got denied because people ran away. Bastards. No sense of humor. The Koriyama City, you're supposed to evacuate that 3 minutes after Fukushima detonated. 40 miles from the crippled nuclear power plant where engineers are trying to cool 3 reactors that don't exist anymore. And some radiation was detected in the air, Dana. Well, that's astounding, really. You sure it wasn't like a banana, a potato chip? That's the 15th? Why is this shit so complicated? Why can't they make nuclear meltdown simple? Oh, that's right. We're March the 15th, Tuesday news on the disaster. They're pulling all kinds. This is one of my favorite. That's probably one of my favorite ones of all time. 500 bone marrow transplant centers across Europe. There has to be. That's the scariest. It's the scariest statement imaginable right there. I'll probably have nightmares tonight because of that one. That freaking statement right there. There's something wicked this way comes. Let's move past it, I suppose. Is that possible? Can we move past a statement like that? Man, that gives me the woolies just thinking about it. Reports that cars stretched beyond the horizon as residents fled mass panic, aka ignored the government's advice to stay inside and get radiated and sick and die. The people she's spoken to think that the government is trying to cover up something. That's an understatement of a lifetime, isn't it? Update at noon Eastern Time. More U.S. military personnel exposed to low-level radiation. Navy moves some ships like leak, low-level radiation, tritium. They're not very nice people. Why would anybody want to trust somebody from the nuclear industry? Shouldn't we build an island and put them all on the island and take away all technology from them too? Because species should have their own island, shouldn't they? A different species like them. We reported yesterday on the word that 17 helicopter crew members from the USS Ronald Reagan were exposed to, you guessed that, low level of radiation. They actually changed the engines on those helicopters because they were so radioactive. But the crew, they held their breath and avoided the worst of it, Dana. The ship's captain said the radiation was removed with soap and water. Well, it was a continuous plume covering the whole planet, first off. The original plume, we've got pictures of them. They were scrubbing the deck, no gloves on. Remember, they were defecating in the hallways and all their digital watches stopped working at the same time. But the captain, the last person you want to follow, is a captain apparently in the Navy. There was 13 aftershocks off Honshu, Japan, that day on the 15th. 2 of them had magnitudes of 6 or stronger, but the Japanese are pretty crafty. That could be the Japanese scale of 7. So 6 is significant. They're completely untrustworthy. Journalist tells us about emergency workers in one Japanese city who lost their lives. They stayed behind to warn others of approaching tsunami. And it's traveling at 400 or 500 miles per hour. You can't outrun. If you see it, you're never getting away from it. Integrity of one reactor's containment vessel may have been affected. That's pretty interesting. Containment of one vessel. That was the International Atomic Energy Agency. They talk about Unit 2. That's on the 15. On the 15, reactor 3 and 4 look like that, and they're talking about Unit 2. You know, the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is just a subsidy, a little lapdog of UN, which is 195 militaries, the military-industrial complex. Well, radiation levels at the plant's main gate, we heard these connotations a lot, at the main gate. I don't know how many times I've heard people say it didn't get outside the gates because radiation knows better to mess with gates, I suppose. Later readings showed much lower levels. This is on the 15th, for goodness sakes, and they're claiming later levels would have been infinitely worse. You know, there's no way there's low levels. There's no way it got better right away. Never got better for months. U.S. Navy detects low radiation again, right? The schizophrenic cover-up. The Navy's Pacific Fleet said the George Washington detected low levels of radioactivity. Compared to what? The carrier stationed in Yokosuka, the Navy says, while there's no danger to the public, the military personnel and their families should take some precautionary steps and limit going outdoors and secure external ventilation systems. Block them, right? Nothing to worry about, though. Don't panic or something. There's a 5.8 magnitude tremor off the east coast of Japan near Honshu within the last 30 minutes. U.S. Geological Survey says writers described it as one of the most powerful aftershocks hit the country since the devastating earthquake and tsunami. It says the buildings in Tokyo swayed a couple of hundred miles away. So that's an absurd significant. So that's on a scale of 7, 5 point something out of 7, right? The Japanese scale, which is really deceitful and dishonest that they use that. And Taiwan does that too. And Taiwan's had some brutal earthquakes, right? Where cities got dropped. Despite the deteriorating nuclear emergency, humanitarian operations continue unaffected. The United Nations Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reported. United Nations Office for the Coordination of the Humanitarian Affairs they created reported in the latest situation report on the crisis. United Nations, UNSCLEAR, IRPA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, tourism boards, UNICEF. And so these people evacuated because of radioactive fallout. More than a quarter of the planned food deliveries reached the affected areas. 550,000 meals of bread, instant noodle, and rice balls, 119,000 water bottles, 117,000 blankets, 130 latrines, 288,000 liters of fuel were transported as well. This is on the 15th. There was 100,000 soldiers were sent out too from just Japan. How bad could Japan's nuclear crisis get? And this is the 17th. Everything's already detonated. The badness has already happened. The real boogeyman was Reactor 3. Can you grab the kid by his foot and hang him upside down for a minute? My Geiger counter is on the blink. The problem with the Geiger counter is if you get exposed to high doses of radiation, it's broken. It's either broken because you dropped it when you were running away like you should do, or it's broken because you didn't run away. If you were an expert in this stuff, you wouldn't go there. Stand up with a Geiger counter in your hand. I can tell you that much. This is the 17 also. How bad could the nuclear crisis get? Fight disinformation. Sign up for Mother Jones's daily newsletter where we give you nothing but disinformation. Good old brain washing is a real deal. Nuclear power experts and watchdogs warned that we're entering uncharted territories. The situation is worsening, says Robert Alvarez. He was a little bit honest for a change at the original, right? Turned into a typical nuclear creep shortly after. But the first week there, he got quoted. He come out with some pretty good stuff. The situation at the Japanese plant is constantly changing. involves several reactors, various states of disrepair. Chairman of Non-Regulatory Commission Greg Jasko said it could be possibly weeks. Under his breath, laughing. Before it's totally under control. And then the risk of a full meltdown still looms. No, the meltdowns are gone into second gear, and the head of the non-regulatory agency would have bloody well known that. He had access to satellite pictures in real time. To recap, the Fukushima Daiichi plant has 6 reactors. The power plant owner, TEPCO, which, by the way, we got a poll on scumbag TEPCO. Did the nuclear industry make Fukushima worse by leaving the degenerate TEPCO in charge of multiple nuclear reactor meltdowns? It's just a little thought I had. I don't know. On top of that, the spent nuclear fuel in Unit 4, which is down for maintenance, had twice ignited and appeared to be the source of high levels of radiation released so far. They only take out about half the fuel, so the reactor core would have had at least a half of fuel load into it, which is the building to your left. The one to your right exploded the day before. Well, this is the 17th we're talking about now. So these things are like that on the 15th. 2 days later, you're in a no man's land. The actual reactor core and the fuel pools were tossed almost a mile in the sky. And they came landed all over this area. So this is 6 days. Let's look at what France says happened on day 6. I'm just going to move ahead just to day 6, which is the 17th. So that's what the plume looked like on the 17th. It's in contact with America and covering almost half that part of the Pacific, right? It's traveled 5,500 miles, and now it's ingressing. So the next couple of days, so by day 20, it's covering the whole planet, radioactive fallout. That's France's model. Let's keep it rolling. Mother Jones. I screwed up today. Oh, that's not good. Right there. Here. Tokyo Electric Power Company has been struggling to bring reactor 1, 2, 3 under control. They're not a decommission authority. They had no right to be on the site once they melted down. They don't build them. They don't repair them. They were the last people that should be in control. They went bankrupt and were nationalized. It was the government, but they kept the name so that you can blame TEPCO instead of Japan and the nuclear industry in whole. So keeping them symbolically like they've done has jeopardized the future of humanity. On top of that, the spent nuclear fuel in Unit 4, down for maintenance, has twice ignited. That's a polite way of calling it melted down. Spent fuel currently presents the biggest problem. Not all the rods are completely spent. Well, the rods, only about 2% of the fuel is used in the rods. The rods are brittle from bombardments of neutrons and alphas and gamma shines and beta rays. So there's trillions of cracks in it. And so they take it out of the reactor because it's very fragile. But it's only about 2% of the uranium, plutonium, and was used up. So once you take it out of the reactor, now it's a total different creature. It's still splitting the same atoms to boil power for 1,000,000 homes, but it's no longer in a containment. So the atoms are released into the environment constantly to haunt humanity for millions of years. Smoke coming from the unit indicates the dry rods are likely causing their zirconium coatings to corrode and ignite, allowing radiation to escape. The building blew up, for goodness sakes. One expert described what is currently happening as a last-ditch effort. If the plant workers can't regain control of the nuclear meltdowns, then the giggity was up. What's up? Oh, I couldn't find it because I'm in the wrong spot. Again, here they are on the 17th claiming there's no meltdowns. In the first couple of years, they wouldn't even admit to a meltdown for the majority. Now, we'll find some where they actually admit it, but for everyone that admitted, there was 100 that wouldn't. Reports. Unit 4 building has been severely damaged. Jeez. I don't know if I go that far with it. Yeah, it needs a bit of paint and gyprock, and yeah, maybe it is damaged. Look at that. Back to Kenneth Bergensen, a physicist who previously worked on nuclear reactor accident simulations at the Department of Energy Sandina National Laboratories, and one of the biggest aquifers in that part of the world. These things are burning in the open air virtually. Then the fission products are just there to be lofted into the atmosphere. These things are burning in the open air. Well, that's a pretty accurate description for a change. When was the last time you heard something like that? That's what I want to know. There's no protection. The reactor 4 building was severely damaged. The spent fuel pool doesn't have containment infrastructure like the reactors do, and there's no protection. On the 17th, well, these things were like that for a couple of days. They were melting and long gone. The Japanese Atomic Industry Forum has released an updated status report on all the units to show that the water levels in the spent fuel of Unit 3 is also critically low. Let's check that out. The first one can spot the fuel pump and the fuel pool. It's 5 buckets of horse manure. Zoom in. So we're all going to move over. Hang on, bear with me. I'll back it up. Back it up, Data. Stop being so weird. Okay, so the fuel pool is at the top of the building. Oh, wait a second. Where the hell is the building? There's quite a lot right there, Dana. There's another bunch over there. Oh, and there's a lot there. Oh. So in other words, and remember, you can turn an SUV around on those beams. Very, very, very scary. And Japanese officials have characterized the reactors as perhaps the most dangerous because it uses mixed oxide fuel, or MOX, which includes uranium, plutonium, presents a more severe radiation threat. Because it's a very energetic, it's already gone through a chain reaction once. There's an explosion on Monday. Unit 3 appears to have damaged the reactor core, severely damaged the building. Tell me that building there. I could probably find a better picture. Find another picture, Dan. Stop being so hard to get along with. Gotta be right there. Every time I scroll and I don't see it, I'm like, ah! Dan is full of shit again. Okay, so the building's supposed to be 190 feet tall. That's a big building, Dana. It's big. Big with a big B. Hang on. I gotta find the context of that. There's so many things I would like to do. Oh my God. Let's see if we get lucky here. I got no idea what I've done with it. The whole problem is you got too much, but you need it. Okay, I give up. I gotta try one more. I'm trying to find something to give you scale. See, they're saying the fuel pool's a reactor 3. That's what reactor 3 looked like when they were saying it. Whoever wrote the story obviously was a nuclear expert. Life-threatening radiation levels makes it even harder for emergency workers to deal. The New York Times reported at least one helicopter turned back, likely due to high radiation levels in a helicopter far above it. All 600 helicopter pilots died in Chernobyl. Bobby Alvarez describes what is currently happening as a last-ditch effort, Hail Mary. If the plant workers can't keep the water levels up, regain control, there could be a full meltdown. Well, that's a full meltdown, period. And so is reactor 4, and so is reactor 2 and reactor 1. And they talk about doused units in hope of cooling them down. Fire engines, military trucks, aircrafts are sent in to douse the units in hopes of cooling it down long after it's gone. So there was a lot of propaganda, and they just went with it forever. 12 years of propaganda. So you got to go all the way back to the original, like we're doing the last 3 days. To the original couple of days, that's the most important information to get a handle on. If the plant workers can't keep the water levels up and regain control, which of course this is on the 17th, and everything was already detonated. Even though I've heard rumors of other detonations after the 16th. Containment vessels Unit 2 and 3 are thought to be damaged. There's an understatement of the year. The building's integrity is compromised at all 3 units. Counting Fukushima 4 was 4 units. Additional fires and explosions could further damage the containment system. If workers are unable to get additional cooling water, the molten fuel core, it'll melt through like butter. I think that's appropriate. I melted through like butter. That sounds about right. I like that one. I'll forgive you for the other indiscretions. That in turn would cause a high-pressure melt injection into the water-filled cement concrete cavity below the reactor, and because the concrete would likely be unheated, the reaction created by the sudden injection of the reactor's ultra hot content would be immense. Sounds pretty serious to me. It'd be like somebody dropping a bomb and then a big cloud of very, 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 very radioactive material above the ground. They contain uranium, plutonium. Well, the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rod is the curium isotopes. And curium isotopes need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium. At the very least, such a scenario would render the area around Fukushima uninhabitable. An area Alvarez says could be possibly large as several northeastern states. No, it's actually like Japan and North America. It's quite a lot worse. Japan in frantic bid to cool the reactors. I think that's the 17th. That's not a frantic bid, that's symbolic. They already know the reactors are gone. They know this is pointless. But they need pictures so the world doesn't panic and hate nuclear like they're supposed to. 17th of March 2011. We're here to correct that mistake. Japanese military helicopters dumped water on an overheating nuclear plant. Damaged. Well, that's a little unfair to say that it's damaged. I'm pretty sure that's destroyed. That's nuclear meltdowns. Not damaged, not leaking, that's nuclear meltdowns. Desperate bid to cover up the nuclear meltdown. The Chinook helicopters dumped around 30 tons of seawater, all aimed at two of the plant's 6 reactors, Reactor 3 and Reactor 4. Well, they already looked like this. You can't cool it down, can't put the fire out, and they knew dumping salt water on that is insane. Another problem is when you dump water on a nuclear meltdown, you're going to wash a lot of the fuel down into one spot where you can start a criticality because it's all piled up in one spot. Workers are engaged in a desperate bid to avert endless nuclear meltdowns. Let's keep going. 4 flights were made of those water dropped by the helicopter. Only one hit its target. And the effort has since been abandoned. And we dropped four helicopter loads. You got to drop it all day and all night long, nonstop. Like what they done in Chernobyl, they killed 600 helicopter pilots. Japan's like, the hell with it. We don't care. We're Japan. Given that more than 100 would be required to hit dead on to fill the reactor with enough water to cool the rods, it is, forgive the phrase, a bit of a drop in the ocean at the moment, one correspondent said. You would need 100 on just a single building to fill up the pool. Police water cannons were sent in to support the effort. In addition, equipment already in use over the days at the plant. Military vehicles designed to extinguish fires at plane crash sites were deployed. Well, the site got just pounded by a tsunami. Very difficult to get around that site at that stage. Tokyo Degenerate Electric Power Company said it will attempt on Friday to connect outsized power cables. It's going to attempt to connect power cables to the nuclear plants. They knew it looked like that. And that's why we got a poll. Because did the nuclear industry make Fukushima worse by leaving TEPCO in charge of multiple nuclear meltdowns? That's actually a pretty good poll, you know? You know what I mean, right? But authorities scramble with a patchwork of fixes. Because I was just laughing about that story where after a few days, just one story showed up where they said they stopped the leaks at Fukushima nuclear meltdowns with sawdust and newspaper and crazy glue. I bet you probably think I'm kidding too, don't you? But I'm not. I'm not. You want me to find it? Oh, it's a little late for doing stuff like that. I think it's way down in this. I have to go through 600 or 700, so let's cheat. Let's get down to 550. Because that's so entertaining, that story. Every once in a while, I like to bring up the story because it makes me giggle. Makes me giggle. Oh, to be a giggler, giggle, giggle. Let the giggle and the giggle, 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 giggly. You can be a giggler. Hang on. No, I'm not cracking up. This is how I think. Just allows my brain to visually. Okay, I'm full of shit. Hang on. Yeah, I'm never going to find it. It's been a while since we... That'll bug me tonight after the show. I'll have to go look for it. So I know where it's to next time. You do stuff like that? We call it self-abuse where I'm to. All I got to do is find it after the show, put it in a folder and label it so I can find it. Yeah, well, okay. Dana, admit you're not going to find it, give it up and get on with the show. Now just hang on, it could happen. Okay, you're probably right. That's true, I'm not going to find it. I went all the way down there, didn't find it. That's kind of disappointing. Let's keep going. Dana, stop looking, get on with the show. I am, hang on, I was there. Damn it. That's such a great headline, right? Where they used sawdust, glue, and newspaper, and plugged up the hole in the multiple nuclear meltdown reactors. The reality of it is, I'll never find it. Okay, I give up. Let's keep going. Head of the Non-Regulatory Commission told a parliamentary hearing that radiation levels around the cooling pools were extremely high, posing deadly risks for the homeless and destitute and the victims of society, the immigrants who don't speak the language, toiling in the wreckage of the earthquake-shattered nuclear multiple melting reactor sites. The dose they could experience would potentially be lethal doses in a very short period of time. What are you going to do with a nuclear meltdown? Oh, yeah, that's right, nothing. Why kill yourself? Literally and figuratively, kill yourself. Number 4 and number 3 was maybe boiling and are not fully covered roofs that would reduce the radiation. Well, let's look at 3 and 4. You think the fuel pool is boiling, or do you think it's already boiled off, blew up and caught fire and everything else? We're almost through this pile, wow. It's like a never-ending pile. It just won't stop. It's like it's possessed or something. Damn you, pile. Sawdust, newspaper, and crazy glue. They patched all the holes with sawdust, newspaper, and crazy glue. It's true, it was written by a journalist, you know. It's going to be difficult to get near the reactors. If you say so, I'll go along with it. The Nato University Tokyo professor told NHK Big Media in Japan that only a small part of the fuel may have melted and leaked outside. Only a small part could leak and get outside. Look at it. Only a small part leaked in and got outside. Well, I'm glad we clarified that. Tell you what. Stay calm. Most of the fuel remains inside the reactor. Called on residents to stop panicking. We can't study you if you run away. I suspect that these are almost, I hate to say it, suicide missions. Come on, it's Japan. It's okay. It's kamikaze missions. These workers have signed up for a kamikaze mission. Put themselves behind their countrymen. Do it, take one for the country. Fukushima. United Kingdom's nuclear scientists are always extra scumbags, I notice. These nuclear scientists in Quake told Al Jazeera the Japanese authorities are thinking of bringing in retired workers to the plant because they have a short lifetime left. I've recovered many versions of that over the years, but that one is special. I'm going to put him in my shit. This is madness list. Maniacs, eh? Well, it's official. Let me get off that page because I won't stop looking for the crazy glue. That's there, I swear. So I got to put that in the house. Shit, this is madness. I'm always a little assaulted by how you don't hear nuclear scientists at Fukushima. Nuclear scientists has gone kamikaze at Fukushima nuclear meltdown. You're never going to hear that. Ever. There's no story that'll come out down the road because no nuclear scientists are going to Fukushima even today. For developing radiation sickness and have to be replaced. Like, I can barely contain my contempt for these people sometimes. 500,000 people live in evacuation centers. The cold and ice made rescue efforts very difficult. And then the yellow radioactive fallout they had in Tokyo, the officials came out and said it was pollen, but it was snowing actually too. You've seen this after Chernobyl, the same thing, this yellow fallout. Contaminated Tokyo tap water unfit for babies. As Japan's radiation heads to Britain, the British public relation firms, they made a fortune being scumbags in the following weeks. We've got some of their stuff. It'll make you throw up if you read it. You'll actually get sick and throw up because it's so evil what they've done. And they went to university and got an education to do it on top of it. They're that evil. Look, if it's unfit for babies, unfit for children, it's unfit for adults. Period. Period. Every atom is in your body. It's pulsing energy at the speed of light. Your body attacks it every second. Or your children or whoever it's into. And so like when you cut your finger bleeds, and white blood cells block it up and then try to repair it. It takes 7, 8, 9 days, but it'll disappear. It's all repaired. There's white cells, white blood cells, which is usually your spleen, making the most important ones, but you make them in all your joints. But also you have a spleen also dedicated to making white blood cells. But you do make them in all your joints, and they repair cuts and stuff like this. When it comes to radiation in your body takes white blood cells and instead of healing the radiation just pulses energy at the speed of light every second for the rest of your life. And so your body has to fix all the chromosomes and DNA and everything else is, and lesions to your organs and that from the radiation that's in your body pulsing, or next to you, or whatever, or just outside your house, pulsing through your house and wrecking your DNA and your chromosomes. You get how it works? And it does that forever. And so it's not like where your finger heals after 7 days, your white blood cell count goes down, your red blood cell comes back up that carries oxygen nutrition. You lose that oxygen nutrition permanently each and every isotope you get in your body. And because it's exploding in every direction, it's wrecking cells and stem cells and everything else in every direction. Your body has to fix that every second. It has to produce more. So now you start eating this stuff and consuming it and drinking it like in the tap water. You're getting all this and you're producing massive white blood cells. So now your immune system is compromised as you start going downhill. You're more susceptible now to pathogens and viruses that were normally harmless and innocuous and benign are now life-threatening to people, particularly children and elderlies. The warnings coming after emerged last night that the radioactive particles have reached Europe and are heading to Britain. We're coming, Britain. They're getting you back for what you've done to Christmas Island and to Australia, you bastards. In the wake of the catastrophe that officials said could cost $190 billion. Well, Hanford wants $700 billion to clean up that nuclear disaster. Makes that the costliest natural disaster in history. After Hanford, which is not a natural disaster, but you're talking about 1,300 miles of coastline. Fresh safety concerns rose today as black smoke was spotted emerging from Unit 3. It shows you a picture of Unit 4. Temporary evacuation of all workers from the complex. Look, these pictures blow me away. What was the date on this? That's the 23rd, for goodness sakes. Anybody that's doing that is probably going to die that day or that week. You are getting pounded from so many sources. It's absurd. So a lot of this is Photoshop, not Photoshop, but photos so the media can put it out and people think that mad scientists are down there trying to resolve it. The fuel pool doesn't exist any longer. The reactor cores need 4,500 tons every minute, 1 million gallons a minute. They said the radioactive iodine, as if iodine is the only thing that reached Tokyo. And for every iodine 131, there's 10 times more 132, 30 times more 133, 31 times more 129. The 132, 133 are 9 times more effective at ionizing and radiating the thyroid glands than the 131, which is really, really, really effective. And he said that's 2 times the recommended limit. So only let your kids drink once a day? You know what I'm saying? It's absurd to frame it that way. Because it's not like they're going to drink water once. You know what I mean? You got to wash them too. They're going to absorb a liter into them by doing that. The list goes on and on and on. You're going to wash their clothing in radioactive water. You're going to mix their food. It's not an immediate health risk for adults. Yeah, but you're still going to get sick and die later from that exposure. And you're going to get brutal bioaccumulation because if you got iodine, you got everything else. Radiation. I hate this word seeped. Ernie Gunnison used to call it bleeding. Like it was a little, like very slow moving, like it was tectonic plates crawling along or something, seeping. Radiation is seeped into vegetables, raw milk and water supply, and even seawater. Really? You're surprised? Even seawater? Officials in Iceland have detected minuscule amounts of radioactive particles, which happen to be 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison, believed to have come from Fukushima, the site of the worst nuclear accident in 25 years. And we hear that narrative consistently, that very sentence so often. It's amazing. And then they show you that picture of reactor 3 totally gone. And reactor 4. Fresh safety concerns rose as black smoke. Black smoke! Spotted emerging from the plant. This is a mixed oxide reactor meltdown. And you're describing as black smoke was coming from, was spotted, like it was an ostrich on a city street or something. It's impossible not to hate these people, isn't it? How is it? How can you not hate these people? They never went back in there for 7 years. They never went back there for 7 years. But they got the fuel out of the reactor 4, which is right here, 3 years later, which of course doesn't exist. There's a better picture of it. It's a disgusting, it's such a dangerous industry. Last night the British government, which is unbelievable scumbag, said radiation from Japan has not been detected by the UK's network of monitoring stations set up after Chernobyl. And any signs of radiation were not expected in the next few days. That's an outrageous lie. That's what that is. I'll give you an example why I'm calling it. There's so many examples of radioactive fallout from Japan already modeled. And I actually don't have a model from Britain, now that you talk about it, right? Britain didn't make a model. Britain is right over here, by the way, where I'm pointing. I'm currently right here. We've done the whole West Coast and research expeditions. We've currently doing research expeditions down here. They're incredibly dismal. We had so much rain today. Today, I finally was trying to work outside, and it rained more than it has in the last 3 months while I was recovering from being sick. I go out and it's like, haha, get you now, buddy. However, France's nuclear agency said tiny amounts were likely to arrive in the country. Tiny amounts were likely to arrive in the country. You already seen France's model once. Speak out of one corner of your mouth and spit out of the other side. This model, I'm going to stop it and just move it manually. This is 20 days right here. And this is 30 days. This is not a tiny amount. This is a catastrophic amount. And this is only the 23rd we're talking about. The traces of radioactive iodine are measured by a network of 63 monitoring stations. So like in the United Kingdom, they closed 9,400 farms after Chernobyl, for starters. 400 still closed today. 63 monitoring stations that couldn't find Fukushima despite the fact that Fukushima found them. They didn't even have to try. Reykjavik, which is Iceland, is the first in Europe. The level is about 1 millionth of the natural background radiation. First off, Canada was hit with 220 million atoms of iodine-129. 20 million atoms of iodine-131 per liters, sustained for months. But Reykjavik, Iceland put up a wall, I suppose, ice wall, and stopped it from coming in there. Are not expected to be detected in Britain. The British nuclear industry they're very special to me. I have a special place in my anger for them. They're absurd scum. The vice president of Tokyo, TEPCO, bowing his head and crying. We zoomed in on his face yesterday, and he wasn't crying at all. No tears, no crocodile tears, no nothing. This is why we got a poll, by the way. I think we do, don't we? Yeah. Did the nuclear industry make Fukushima worse by leaving TEPCO in charge of multiple nuclear meltdowns? Why, yes, they did, Dana. Indeed, they did. Thank you, everybody that had voted. We appreciate it, by the way. Japanese officials said the health risk was low outside the plant. This is the 23rd. But yesterday were chastised by the degenerate International Atomic Energy Agency watchdog. This is I can create an energy agency and call it a watchdog. That doesn't mean it's actually a watchdog. In my case, I'm sure it will be, but in their case, it's not. Over a lack of information about how much radiation has been emitted. Well, the pictures were available right away of the reactors. If the International Atomic Energy couldn't figure it out, should get out of the way. Levels in Tokyo rose tenfold in the days after the quake. It was actually 500 billion times background. 500 billion times in just a radioactive glass. There was rainfall where it deposited 29 million becquerels a square meter, for goodness sakes, all over Tokyo. Tokyo was so radioactive they couldn't get rid of their soil because it's too their sediment from the water filtration facilities because it's too radioactive. Water filters for the communities were too radioactive, the sediment left over. The sewage was too radioactive to get rid of and the garbage, the ashes left over were too radioactive to get rid of. That's game over, right? IAEA lacks data on temperatures of the spent fuel pools, reactor 1, 3, and 4. Well, there was no fuel pools, right? So they were setting us up right there. That's proof right there. There's zero, zilch, not even a remote possibility that they thought that the reactor fuel pools of 1 and 3 and 4 were actually existing. And so they come out and say, well, we're waiting for information to see how hot the temperature is. Don't worry, we're on it. That's an amazing revelation right there. The IAEA lacks data on the temperatures of spent fuel pools of reactor 1, which detonated, 3 and 4, which detonated. What a low-down, low-life criminal thing to do, isn't it? What a criminal, what a betrayal. My goodness. The only thing nuclear is good at is betrayal. Let's go figure. Hey, I'm sorry. Japanese. It had been claimed the plant was storing more uranium was designed to hold. It repeatedly missed mandatory safety checks. Yeah, stick it to them. Woo! That was excellent. Thank you. I needed that. I kind of lost faith for a second there. Workers at Fukushima overheated nuclear plant struggle to cool down the crippled facilities. Let me show you that picture. They're burying the dead. Bring out your dead is actually real, folks. Bring out your dead. They're just burying them. They're going to incinerate them later, they said. The nuclear industry is in charge. Everything else is garbage. Yesterday, firemen connected electrical cables to the plant in hopes of restarting the cooling system. This is the 23rd we're actually talking about. It's kind of hard to wrap your mind around. I'll try to help you. Just bear with me. Everybody was naughty, naughty. Are you going to be connecting power to Medusa? Why are you guys going to be so evil all the time? A thief in a town of Kasetnuma stole 300,000 euros from a bank vault whose doors were smashed open in the tsunami. It was probably one of the employees of the banks, right? Leave the door open, the tsunami's coming. Grab that money and run. U.S. halts imports from the affected areas of Japan. They lifted all restrictions last year in September, along with Europe. Canada removed all restrictions after 93 days, while everybody else kept the restrictions, 55 countries, for 10 years. Canada's like, well, you can't ship it anywhere else. We'll take it. Canada just announced they're going to raise the price of gas to fight climate change by 61 cents a litre. And so the opposition said, well, the average family right now is spending $1,200 a month because of the inflation that you caused by sanctions. And how much is this going to increase the inflation for the people that can't afford it to eat as it is now because of what you've done last year? He said, well, climate change has to take an issue, right? We have to do something about climate change. And he said, well, how many people at 61 cents a litre, he said, don't you think this is a little extreme? He said, no, but climate change is extreme. And the opposition said, but how much is that going to raise the price of food and transportation that people can't even afford right now and are crying and dying in desperation because you caused this massive inflation for over a year now with the United Nations pact with the devil. And Trudeau here in Canada, the Prime Minister Trudeau says, yeah, but we got to take a stand against climate change. But at 61 cents a litre extra, and price has gone up to the ceiling already because of Russia. There's 59 wars going on at that time. They didn't cause inflation worldwide. This was staged, right, to bankrupt the most vulnerable of society. Workers touch water with radiation 10,000 times normal. That's an iconic picture right there. I think that's as far as we're going to make it tonight, but it feels in my back. Tell Mom I love her. You can't, because you're having X-rays and gamma shines and neutron bombardments and beta rays. You need something 4 feet thick, right, to protect you. And you can't go into a nuclear meltdown because you can't fix a nuclear meltdown. And so they sacrifice endless people so they can pretend that. And I mean, like when you look at what the reactors looked like on the 24th rather. This happened on the 16th for sure. The reactors looked like that. And so you can't go fix something when nothing exists anymore and that you're going to get a lethal dose from it. The nuclear industry was happy to do it, knowing that these people would get brutal, life-threatening doses immediately and would die that day or that week. So they can have pictures to pretend that everything was being worked on. I think it's the nuclear industry has already wrecked the planet enough. We got to put an end to it. We can't just sit in silence forever. At some point, we're going to have to speak up and admit that these buildings are real, and that the fallout and the harm it's done to all the species and humanity is actually real. At some point, we're all going to be dressed up in paper suits, taking turns to go in into a nuclear meltdown. I mean, they wanted to conscript everybody 60 years of age and older in Japan after Fukushima. 60 and older should be prepared to die at the Fukushima nuclear meltdown. That's the official notebook. Remember that statement. Tokyo governor suggested a Fukushima draft. Everybody should take a hit for the nuclear industry. And they lied now for 12 years and pretended that they got the fuel out of those two pools. And the media willingly, viciously perpetrated that deception upon us, and now have jeopardized the future of humanity and all species. Just another day in the crazy world of nuclear, I guess. They're better than everything else. I'm going to close the poll. Did the nuclear industry make Fukushima worse by leaving TEPCO in charge? Multiple nuclear meltdowns. That's pretty easy. I figured I'd give you guys an easy night. Well, hell yeah, Dana. Woo! Still alive, made it through the night. Oh, shit, it's 12 o'clock. Should I do a shout-out tonight for something? Why not, eh? Nabi. Hi, Nabi. And Dana Nasana. Pamela. Peaceware. John Curtis. Good night, everybody. Hooks for everybody. Have a great night. Richard P. Haig. PBS lover. Good night, everyone. Have a mad great day tomorrow. We got rain and easterly, northeasterly winds again. By Saturday, it's supposed to change and get sunshine. Bubbly. Peace where I see Stephen Young out there. I know Colette is out there somewhere tonight. Hi, hugs for everybody that I miss. My apologies. My brain's a little smurfed up here tonight. Shapes. There's Colette. Look at that. Super glue will fix it. Third grader wrote that article with a master's degree in journalism on top of that. Yeah, his daddy was a nuclear expert, so we let him write for our media. That's an incredible story, isn't it? Don Vincent. Ooh, we're almost through. I'm just going vast thinker. I've had rather a long day today. I'll be okay tomorrow. Yesterday was a long day too. Good days. I can't wait for the weather to break. We got to get under the truck and find out what's going on there. Yeah. Lady Tabitha, goodie. John Curtis, Katja. James Lucid. Excellent. Stephen Young, there's Stephen. Stephen might leave one comment or two, but I mean, it's hard for him to type. It's really difficult. And so it's a lot of work for him just to leave one comment, folks. It was overnight, and he ended up in intensive care for months. And the recovery has been, from what he told me, is pretty disappointing anyway. Leonard Lacey. We're almost up. There we are. This is the top. Comments. We'll come back down to the most recent comments. See if there's anybody I missed. Looks good. Let's call it a night. Nice piecework. Alrighty. That was a crazy show tonight. Holy shit, that was a massive amount of crazy headlines from the original. Those things are full of just diamonds, eh? See everybody tomorrow night. Tomorrow night we're going to be doing a news cycle show, I hope. We're going to try to anyway. I like to get that out of the way. Have a great night, great day tomorrow. If you make it this far, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Costs as little and might actually go a long way. Take care, folks.